Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Resident Evil 0. In the last part, we finished off our duties in the Ecliptic Express, crashing it in the process, and now we're at the Umbrella training facility. Like I said last time, we're going to be spending the meat of the journey in this game here, so get used to the layout here. Now, as is usual for like the early parts of the RPD or mansions in the other games, there's a couple directions you can go to start, but a lot of the paths encounter dead ends with items more quickly, so we're up here on the second floor in order to get progress done the fastest. In particular, in the room we read the document towards the end of the last part, we got ourselves a weird little handle, and we're going to need to use that around here. The training facility is 3 floors, and we do access those 3 floors pretty quickly compared to even, say, Resident Evil 1's mansion. But if there's one thing I do prefer about this game to, say, Code Veronica, it's a lot easier to get from one end of the map to the other in a shorter time frame than it is in Code Veronica, because Code Veronica had a lot more long straightaways. There was only one way to get through, whereas there's usually a couple of ways to get around the mansion pretty quickly here. So we obviously have a kind of contraption right here. If we actually come over here to what looks to be a handle, we can investigate it. It's a winch control for a lift. There's a square-shaped hole in the panel, and if we check the handle we got in the room where the crows broke in last time, it's got a square handle end. So use it here and we'll be able to use this lift. So we have to send one character up there. I'm going to be sending Rebecca. You can technically get characters up here 2 ways. You can either split up the characters and then just walk one of them over here, or this is one of the few cases where actually controlling the other character with the C-stick really comes in handy, because there's not a lot of those, honestly, where that is super useful. Technically, it's useful in avoiding enemies, but at the same time, I'd rather the AI be attacking alongside me, because usually the two firing their handgun bullets at a single zombie together will kill it pretty quickly. Although on that note, something I should note. The two characters actually do have different AI when it comes to fighting alongside your player character. Billy will shoot at things based on proximity, from memory, whereas Rebecca, I think, only fires while you fire, so it's overall more efficient in group situations to be in control of Rebecca and fire if you're trying to kill things quickly. These somewhat annoying little guys are plague crawlers. There's not too many of them in the game, but they're kind of tanky compared to zombies. They're pretty fast as well, although that speed will usually impact your partner's health more than you, I would say, as the AI character follows at a close rate behind you, but it's slow enough compared to you where they'll probably take some cheap shots if there's a lot of them in a room. Not too hard to kill, especially with their increased size, but not a fan of fighting them in most cases. Be careful out here, because obviously there are crows. So if you get too close to them, they will start flying around and try to peck at you. Not too annoying compared to some of their other incarnations, but worth noting all the same. Backtracking to this room really quick, because in recording I almost forgot to investigate a very specific thing, because obviously there's these gears. It's a solidly built clock. The minute hand is missing from the dial. I'm sure that's not a puzzle in any form. Also, because I know this room has one such case from memory, let's talk about the game's differences on difficulties. We're playing on normal mode, so this is effectively the most balanced version of the campaign. But on easy mode, from memory, there are fewer enemies. They have less health and deal less damage, but also, and this is potentially the most important thing, you find more supplies along the way. In particular, there's a few more herbs and first aid sprays, and I think even some ammo peppered throughout the various areas in the game. And from memory, on easy mode, for instance, that last room has a first aid spray in it to help you along the way. Honestly, I would really recommend playing this game on easy the first time through, unless you're super stubborn about things, because the single-player co-op nature of the game, meaning you need to split resources, I think leads to this also being one of the hardest Resident Evils on a first playthrough. So that extra buffer can help a lot in the case you want to try to like the game as much as possible. I know I certainly tried to on my first run. Get used to seeing this room, by the way. We're going to need to come through here several times. And there are 3 levers here. The one in the middle you can actually investigate, but for some reason I always have trouble finding the space to investigate it when I'm here as Rebecca. The reason you can investigate that one is because its chain is attached to this cage. It's a cage for raising animals. The cage is too heavy to lift. Hence the chain and lever, because we need to use that to lift this, to get the item that's so clearly beneath it. But Rebecca is not strong enough to do this, so we need the extra hulking frame of Billy to do so. From memory, if you send Billy up here, you can get that whole thing started, but you can't collect the item unless you have a second person around anyway, so we need both of them together to do so. Thankfully, if we just come down these stairs and investigate the far door over here, we can unlock it and find ourselves back in the main foyer of the training facility. So this way we can swap back to Billy and walk him back over here to reunite the two and then go get that done. This is what I was talking about earlier, where despite my distaste for this game's unique mechanics, I do think its level design is several steps above, say, Code Veronica, Gaiden, and a couple of other games in the series, where you're never too far from a certain location you need to get to unless it's literally on the other side of the mansion. But even then, there's doors you can unlock and pathways to unlock that will make that trip shorter ultimately to begin with. Versus what Code Veronica does several times in its first 2/3 or so. Maybe 3/4, where it's like, hey, you're at this exact end of the map. You got a key item. Go walk all the way to the opposite side of the map, taking upwards of 5+ minutes, use it over there, and then come all the way back here. God. Though I do think overall, Code Veronica does have the more interesting narrative notes, particularly in background story, but that also is probably because I prefer Chris and Claire as characters to Rebecca and Billy. But that's largely because it's like Chris and Claire are in more games to begin with, and that whole sibling angle makes it a little more interesting. But I'll talk more about my thoughts on this game's story as we go through it. So now that we've reunited the two playable characters, my next destination is to head back into the room Rebecca was just in. Because for one thing, obviously we can do the thing with the lever over here to lift that cage up with Billy now. But first off, I actually want to head into the other door in this little hallway down the stairs first, in order to grab some items over there. I am going to drop some items here really quick though, just for inventory purposes, because I need more inventory on Billy for reasons coming up. Also be wary, the moment you come into this room, there are going to be 2 plague crawlers waiting for you. At this point, because of the hunting gun, I have a good enough spread I can take them out pretty quickly, but be careful all the same. Obviously, Billy taking some extra damage and doing some extra damage helps. Technically, I could recommend waiting and just using your handgun in here, because the shotgun bullets might be better used than something else coming up, but oh well. Though there are still some in here. So obviously, we got a couple items in here. First off, we got some shotgun ammo, which I'm going to take. Very clearly, we have another weapon in here. But also, there's the fact of the other thing glowing in the distance. Meet one of your long-term goals for the first bit of the training center, the white statue. You might have noticed already in the second floor of the main hall, there are some scales directly in front of where the room we got the second note here in the training center was. We want to put that over there. You can either put it on the scales directly, or you could just place it near it. I would actually recommend placing it near it on the ground and not onto the scales directly for the moment, because that'll technically save you like a 15 seconds at most later on. Plus, depending on where you like to drop items to quote-unquote store them, having it near where it needs to be could be helpful. There's something written on the base. When good and evil are brought into balance, a new path will be opened before you. I remember, though, in my first playthrough, having to make a very meaty backtrack for a couple of items I placed down on the ground in places that were not very opportune to go back and get easily, which just made that playthrough all the longer and more painful, which is the main reason why you'll see me usually drop stuff here in the main hall, because at least in my head, that keeps it in one place that is close enough to where I need to be. That does mean I might need to do more frequent, shorter ferries to go get some items and bring them back and forth to a place, but at least I know where they are in that case without having to check the map. Helps as well that, unlike some other games in the series, I don't think any enemies ever spawn in the main hall there. It stays peaceful the entire game. It's not like some of the other games where, alright, past this point, the main hall of the area will have a zombie or two in it, or some Cerberuses will spawn in, or things like that. Albeit, it's only really happened a couple of times now I think about it. Usually the main hall is a completely safe place in most of these games. Also, if you're playing along and have about the same ammo reserves as me, maybe put the handgun closer to where we are right now than where I just did. I need the inventory space for something else at the moment, but trust me, you might want to have it a little closer to you. Alright though, same as getting the hook shot back on the train, put Billy up there, bring Rebecca down here, and then investigate this to start this section here. It's a machine for winding a chain. Start the machine? Yes. And now that Billy's in position, we just need to swap to Rebecca and grab the item. They not only give you control of Billy there in the case you don't have Rebecca around here for some reason. And thus our prize, a facility key. Yay!
Rebecca!
Next boss fight is the Centurion. It's a large millipede, yes, but it's actively not too dangerous. I think it can hit you with the claws on its tail, it can swipe its body into you, and I think it has a third attack. And obviously a lot of those will hurt, but it doesn't actively hit you that hard compared to some other enemies in the game even. It's also not even like that outwardly aggressive towards you. Obviously it is holding Rebecca, but you don't need to worry about hurting her yourself. Your guns will do nothing against her. I believe the Centurion does slowly drain her health, or at least if you leave it alone long enough, it will basically like stab at her a little bit and drain her health slowly. Knowingly so, you can't see her health on the pause menu, but I think you can get a game over that way. I've only gotten game overs in this fight by Billy's health draining more so than Rebecca's, though, to show how much she has. A little bit tanky on the health from memory, but it's a boss fight. Though that does get into, like, the weird numbers that enemy and player health have behind the scenes in Resident Evil. To quote the Resident Evil wiki directly here, the Centurion has 600 health, which sounds like a lot, but Rebecca has 150 and Billy has 200, whereas a close-range shotgun shot does about 50. So it's a lot of just very minute numbers to enhance the atmosphere, but I did basically run out of ammo here, though, so I need to walk down here and get the handgun. I'm not sure, though, what happens if you try to leave the room in this boss fight. I'm not sure if Billy goes, I have to help Rebecca, or if the game just gives you an instant game over. And there's the only time we're actually hearing the boss outright damaging Rebecca. So let's get up there and finish this off. Annoyingly so, this thing has so little health left, a single handgun bullet from this distance does it.
Rebecca! Are you all right?
Yes, thank you.
Admittedly, in retrospect, after editing and recording, I really wish I had remembered that the faster strat for the Stinger fight that takes way less ammo was a thing, because the extra shotgun ammo really would have come in handy here to make that fight go by faster, but oh well, I have 63 handgun bullets. That's more than enough for any enemies around here, and there's more than enough ammo left in the game for me to not really worry. Either way, now we have the facility key, which now that I've investigated it, is the fire key. We can use that on doors that have fire emblazoned on them, which is pretty consistent for how the series treats important keys in Umbrella facilities. Looking at the suit keys in Resi 2, the armor type keys in Resi 1, all that jazz. I'm coming back into this room for literally no reason at this point, so we're going to speed up through it, actually. The reason I'm coming in here is because I remember there being flame rounds in here for the grenade launcher, but I'm thinking of easy mode if memory serves. Speaking of which, the grenade launcher, because I didn't talk about it outright. Usual shtick, effectively the replacement for a shotgun for a second character. Better range, but the damage spread's a lot more focused with most of its rounds, but at the same time, like Resi 1 and 2 and all those, it can hold as many of a singular round type as you have, and you can stack as many of a singular round type together as you have. There are 3 round types overall. Some are more effective against certain enemies. Like, if you find any leech zombies around, flame rounds are really good against them. Grenade rounds are what you should use against most zombies. Acid rounds you should save for very specific enemy types. Also, I'm speeding up through a save right here. I don't usually save this early in my other Resident Evil LPs, but I also know those games a lot better than Code Veronica, or I'm safer at them in general, so I don't mind doing that. It is one of those things where I do try to bring my best for every LP gameplay-wise, and sometimes I will actually re-record sections if I fail too big at them. but there are games that I like more and will put more effort into than others. Resident Evil 0, I like a lot of parts about it, like I've said, but ultimately, my opinion of this game is low enough that I don't feel the need to do that and play it as expertly as I could compared to some other games. Because at this age, I would rather put that time into other games, like Ys 8, which I finished like 40 minutes ago. That's a really good game. Also, I killed this zombie in particular. You probably don't need to. If memory serves, this is either the last or the second to last time I walked through this room in specific. So if you can avoid killing them here, do that. Although the game, I should note, does, like with Resident Evil 1 and 2, spawn zombies in earlier game rooms as you get further into the story, just so there's a bit of a constant threat. Usually like an extra zombie here or there. Sometimes it's a leech zombie. Often, though, it's just a complete enemy type replacement. Welcome to this office. We got a table here we can push. I think both Billy and Rebecca can push it, but I always do with Billy just in case Rebecca can't. Our goal here is that light switch over there. But before I go press it, I'm gonna keep pushing the desk into the position it needs to be, or little table. This is pretty deliberately just a reference to Resident Evil 1, though. You might remember, for those who played the original Resident Evil 2, a room, I believe, on the second floor of the West Wing? Because, a little desk we can push, a light switch, and a mounted animal head on the wall. I wonder what could happen here, potentially. But obviously, of course, we also got some good ammo to get, as well as another note to get more lore. Hey, Billy, what are you doing? Get back down on that floor and you read that note, mister. Thank you. Assistant Director's Diary, September 2nd. A useless bunch of trainees as always. Where does headquarters find these idiots? We did get a couple of decent ones though, so can't complain, I guess. William and Albert, they might have a future. September 25th. Scholar Will, Practical Al, they really are opposites. And they're always competitive in everything they do. There's something ruthless and cruel about them both. October 7th. Got a sudden call from the director. It was to tell me to encourage a rivalry between those two. It's the first time since this training facility was built that Director Marcus has ever shown interest in anything other than his research. Well, whatever, orders are orders. I'm gonna have them tearing at each other's throats. Those names definitely sound familiar, and it's not like they were already in a cutscene earlier in the game, huh? Either way, now that we got that, let's go press that light switch and collect our very predictable item. I do kind of find it funny, though, how this game just goes in that cutscene near the end of this train. Like, hey, here's Wesker and Birkin. If you know, you know. If you don't know, well, you don't know, but you're gonna know. Climb up here, grab our predictable item. Which, in this case, there seems to be something here. Is a iron needle, which, I wonder what that kind of looks like if we think about earlier parts of the game and just examine it for a better close-up. Could be some part of a decoration. There's a hole at the base. That looks kind of like a clock hand, don't it? Well, we saw only one of those with one hand earlier, so let's head over there. But yeah, like Resident Evil 0 is one of those weird prequels where it very much assumes you understand things from earlier games in the series release-wise to understand some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, which I think is fine, but I like to imagine people who started with this one just being incredibly confused, and I don't envy them. Either way, I'm speeding up all this here because we got a little bit of a backtrack to do. This is one of the larger ones in this sector of the area, so just to help get things along, we're gonna speed up and get back over to the room we were in with Rebecca earlier over here. Also, just to talk about it, Resident Evil 0's puzzles on the whole aren't too hard, both in terms of the literal key hunts and placements, but also in terms of the actual puzzles. I'd say Resident Evil Remake, for instance, is a much more brain-teasing game with its puzzles and stuff like that. It's a solidly built clock. Move the hands? Yes. So we need to hit it to a certain time. And if you remember a note we found very quickly after entering the training facility, they brought up the time 8:15. So get that minute hand over the 3 for the 15 minutes, and then move the hour hand over the 8, and you're good to go. You do have to press the OK button. You could theoretically brute force this. I'd say that would take too long. If you didn't find that note, go get that note, or just use me as a guide and put 8:15 in anyway. You don't need to get the notes. Those are technically optional. It's just that's where most of the hints are for first-timers. Doing that has now unlocked 2 doors in other parts of the training facility. One of which is on the 2nd floor of the main hall, another of which is in a hallway we've yet to be to. It's just good to get this done before heading over, especially to the latter of the 2, just so you don't have to backtrack over to here. We're gonna hit up the first of those 2 rooms first, though, because there's a key item we need there, on top of some supplies and a note. The note isn't exactly that helpful, but I might as well grab it anyway, although I do miss some notes on this playthrough from memory. I'll try to remember where they are as we go and note which ones I miss. Also, something that's kind of neat about this game and Remake, the technology they were initially released on could load fast enough that they didn't actually need the door loading transitions. But in testing, QA teams and even I think some early audiences were like, yeah, it feels weird not having them there, so they actually put them all in back. Because that they're actually a little longer than some of the door transitions in the classic Resis, because now they're there more for atmosphere than for loading. Notably though, if you don't like them, modern PC releases of Resident Evil 1 and 0 do have mods to remove them, in the case you wanted that for some reason. Either way, here we are in the room in question. We got a couple things we need to pick up, and here starting with this note. A verse of poetry. The moon bows to the earth swears loyalty to the sun, and the great law of the sun governs all things. This itself is the keystone, the pointer to glory. All our hands cannot open the door to heaven. There are a lot of zombies in here, and you're probably going to need to take out a couple because they pincer attack you from both sides of this table, and we need to get to the other side because the key item in this room is on the other side of it. On top of the shotgun ammo we just saw a moment ago, which, hey, that's pretty helpful too. You could just try to knock them all down, or this could actually be a pretty good case to use a Molotov cocktail on just standard zombies because, from memory, the way the Molotovs work in this game is the impact does damage, but then the fire will catch onto the zombies and do procedural damage if they survive, and they'll also walk through fire, which will also do damage. Which, hey, that's pretty handy. I'd still probably save them for leech zombies first in the rare instance you run into them, but that's just the thing. There are much fewer leech zombies than there are standard zombies. It's just that the leech zombies are more dangerous. Over here, though, is the key item in question for this room. This is a second microfilm. This completes the pair. So now we can go take those over to where they need to go and do a thing that way. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 5, we're going to hopefully find a place we can go use those 2 microfilms while further exploring the training facility. See you guys then.